welcome back to my channel. I'm Camila and today I'm bringing you a Jane Austen video. And the story behind this video is that in 2021 I read all 6 of Jane Austen's main novels, and I wanted to do like a little bit of a recap and tell you what I liked about each of them, my official ranking, and I guess how I would advise people to go about reading her novels if they desire to at some point. I decided to split this video into like 4 sections. So the first one's kind of about Jane Austen, what kind of writing she does, just in case you kind of new to Jane Austen and you've not tried her books before. Section 2 is a little bit of a recap and what I thought about each of the 6 novels. In section 3, I'm going to give you my ranking. And in section 4, I'm kind of just advising you on like the order that I think maybe you'd want to try reading them in, and kind of plans for the future, because I definitely want to reread them. So without further ado, let's jump into section 1, which is about Jane Austen as a writer. So who was Jane Austen? She was an English novelist from the kind of late 18th century and early 19th century. She's often regarded as like one of the first true female novelists, and I guess like she's one of these writers from the era that we still think of today and are still so relevant, because there's so many like modern adaptations of her work, and she's truly brilliant and she's worth giving a try. She's also really well known for having written novels of manners, which is actually a term that I've just learned because I was kind of googling and I'm like, oh yeah, it seems like it's very much like a window into the era, and I really enjoyed that kind of novel. And then I discovered the term novel of manners that's kind of recreating and giving you a glimpse of the social conditions and customs of like a specific society and era. And all of Jane Austen's novels are very much like that. They are a glimpse into the lives of especially women of this period, like 18th and 19th century. And I know the middle class didn't exist back then, but I kind of want to say it's mostly based in that class. But I guess you could also call it back then like gentry. So it's not like the poor people, like the servants, and it's not the rich people. It's kind of the people that are in the middle. They may have property, but because she focuses on women characters, then we get the idea of the economic status and like the situation that women found themselves in that era, which is very much reliant on kind of their brothers and cousins and like just male relatives who would inherit the properties and potentially put them, you know, to become homeless, and their reliance on marriage to be able to kind of continue living in potentially the standard that they used to, or just to continue because women weren't much if they weren't married back then. So it's a very interesting look at that and the place of women at that time. Her 6 main novels are Pride and Prejudice, you have Sense and Sensibility, Mansfield Park, Northanger Abbey, Emma, and Persuasion. She's also written I want to say it's like a short novel, so maybe like a novella, Lady Susan, which is I think in the epistolary form. She also has 2 other work of fiction that haven't been completed before her death, and these are The Watsons and Sanditon, and she also wrote some juvenilia as well. And I do plan at some point to read all of those. I think I really enjoy her writing and I want to kind of dig more, and all of these extra little bits I kind of give you just a little bit more of a writing, a little bit more of a view into the era as well. Now we're in part 2 of this video, which is just about the 6 novels. So I'm going to be talking about them the order that I read them. And so we're going to start with Pride and Prejudice. So I read this book, and please remember that I obviously am French speaking, that I read this book after the movie, I think it's 2005, the movie with Keira Knightley by Joe Wright. When that came out, God loved it. I actually watched this movie every year. It's me and my mom's like one of our favorite movies to watch together. Loved it. So picked the book up after that. And I think that's fair because that's around the time that I started to read in English more. And loved it. It's just such a beautiful story. And I think the movie was so beautiful that it kind of impacted my view of it. It's also one of Jane Austen's most famous novels, so it's a good place to start. We all know the story, of course, but if you don't know the story, maybe you haven't read it yet, and if you haven't, oh my god, lucky you, because I would love to go back and just read this from scratch. I would love to know what it feels like to read it and watch the movie without having much knowledge of what's going on, or like kind of the attached baggage and feelings that go with having it as one of your favorite books. So yeah, you have something beautiful ahead of you. So if you don't know what it is about, we follow the Bennet family, mostly the Bennet sisters, and especially one of the sisters, Elizabeth Bennet. And she's the second oldest daughter, and she's very opinionated. And then we kind of get introduced to her potential suitor, Mr. Darcy, who's very like stoic. They are both very judgmental, and I think like throughout the book we really get to know with them the way that they learn to distinguish between like superficial kindness and generosity and all of that, and like just the personality aspects versus like true acts of, you know, kindness and generosity. And I just like that kind of arc. It's just beautiful. As with all her novels, like I've discussed before, we get a really great look into the situation of women who were stuck in the like economics of property and marriage, and what that means for them, you know, and what they have to then, you know, they have to look for a husband and all of that. So yeah, a really, really wonderful book. I completely enjoyed it. But I will not give you my ranking yet. That's in the next section. So let's get on to the next book, which is Mansfield Park. So in 2021, I did decide to reread all of them. And I didn't start with Pride and Prejudice. I started with Mansfield Park, which was a bizarre choice and potentially an error because, yeah, it definitely is not the best one to start with. So I'll just say it now. I picked this up, I think it's because I had a copy. So I decided to just pick it up. In this novel, we follow one of Austen's kind of most famous heroine, I think, Fanny Price. Parenthesis, but I've done a rant in the previous video about names. I don't understand why she's reusing names, because Fanny, the name Fanny, actually comes up in another novel, and I was just like, oh my goodness, why are you doing this? Pick a different name, please. So anyway, you know, let's close parenthesis. Fanny Price is sent to live with her wealthy relatives because her family can't quite care for her. And she's not treated very well, and almost like a servant, like she's kind of treated as kind of below them. She's not really one of them. I think there's like a sentiment that she has to have gratitude because they took her in, but also I think it feeds her inferiority complex, which is really kind of interesting to see her grow, because I think that her character is one that is often judged for how passive she is, and I have to agree, but she's also she very much knows what she wants. When she rejects a marriage proposal, I was just like, yes, like she can stand on her own. And I love that about this character. She's very much a complex kind of female character, and she evolves, and it's just really fascinating. I really enjoyed this novel, but there are two things that I didn't love, and that's that I feel like the family gaslights her so hard about her health, and she clearly has a chronic illness. I've not found much about this, but from the way that they describe how she is, I'm just like, she has to have some sort of chronic fatigue or like something, or like anemia. I found like an academic paper about this, but I find it very weird that no one really acknowledges that, but I find like they gaslit her for how she is inherently, and I feel like that's really sad. And the second thing is that I find, and I won't tell you what it is, but the ending to me felt like a consolation prize and not really earned. So I was a bit upset about that. I feel like that ending kind of ruined the book a little bit for me. But anyway, let's move on to the next book that I read, which was Sense and Sensibility. I actually really enjoyed Sense and Sensibility. I thought it was really well done. It kind of reminded me a little bit of Pride and Prejudice because we follow sisters, so it's a Dashwood sisters in this occasion. And I actually really loved the sisterly bond. I think it was one of my favorite things about this novel. And I love to see like the ups and downs of their kind of love life, if that's what you call it, I guess, like with their potential suitors. And I thought it was really well constructed, and I really felt for the characters, the main two sisters, just loved them. So the quick thing about the story is that, yeah, we follow the Dashwood sisters, well, also with their mother. So they get basically evicted from their house when their father dies. They have a half-brother who the dad actually made promise to take care of the half-sisters, but he decides not to with the influence of his wife, Fanny, another one. And so, yeah, so he breaks that promise, so they have to leave, and they have to kind of make their own way. And the girls kind of fall in love, and, you know, things happen. And it's just, I really, really enjoyed it. It reminded me a lot of Pride and Prejudice, so that's positive. Next, I read Northanger Abbey, and that one I guess wasn't that memorable to me because I had to Google it, and I was like, which one was that already? I forgot. So in this novel, we follow Catherine Morland. She's the main heroine of the book, and she is kind of a teenager, so she's very naive. She loves novels, especially Gothic novels, and she kind of clearly sees the world through that lens, which is very relatable for a teenager who loved reading. So totally get it, and I just like that we see her grow through that. So I think that was really well done. She gets invited to go to Bath, a city in England, for the winter ball season, and then she meets like families, like influential people. I think it's the Tilneys and the Thorpes. That's it. And then there's, you know, there's engagement, there's potential suitors, and there's like errors that happen and cheating, and you know, it's very full of scandals, really, this one. But I think I actually did enjoy it. It just wasn't that memorable. Then next I read Emma, and if you've seen the movies Emma period, for some reason it has a period, or Clueless, then you'll probably know what this is about. So we follow the main heroine of the novel, Emma Woodhouse, and she's very much like a young idealist, woman who loves matchmaking, and she thinks she knows best, and she's very privileged. And I think there's something about her that is very kind of keen, but also like, I guess we can also judge her a little bit for like the way that she sees life. But throughout the book, I feel like she really evolves again. I guess a thing that I really liked about Jane Austen's novels is that the heroines are flawed, and they grow and they learn lessons, and we do that with them, and that's just beautiful. So Emma tries to get like some people together, and she kind of misses some signal. There's some stuff she doesn't see or knows, and it kind of gets into a little bit of a comedy of errors. And I just thought it was really fun. Like, Emma is a fun character, and she's flawed, and I think that's why that makes her such a great character and a great story. And the movies are so good, so go definitely watch those. And finally, I read Persuasion. Well, actually, I read it twice in 2021. I listened to an audiobook in like June. Didn't love it. I think it's maybe because I'd not gotten everything from it, or I wasn't listening completely. It may have been an abridged version as well. Anyway, and then I read it. I read a copy in July, and then I was like, oh my god, I loved it. I'm so glad that I gave it another chance because it actually stunned me. So we follow Anne Elliot, and she is kind of late 20s. She's Austen's oldest heroine. We actually quickly learned that she had prospect of marriage when she was younger, but she rejected a proposal by Captain Frederick Wentworth. That's because she was like persuaded that he wasn't suitable. And then she comes like kind of back in touch with them, like on purpose. Like, her family kind of, I think they were renting the house to like his sister, so that she becomes like reacquainted with him, and he's since made like a fortune, and she's just like, clearly she liked him, and she wished she hadn't said no. And it's a really beautiful novel, and I think it is a lot of reflection of the choices we make and who we listen to, especially family and like chosen family and all of that. And I thought that was just so beautiful, and it kind of surprised me in its depth. And also, it's just really relatable, and she's very kind, and also I feel like she's one of like the most honest with herself and with others, like as the characters of Jane Austen. So yeah, loved it. And now for part 3, we're finally at my ranking, and now that you've heard a little bit about what I thought about each one, I'm sure you can kind of guess a little bit where they are on the list. So I actually find it really hard to make this list because some of them were just kind of a bit equal. So I've made the list, but I will tell you the caveat afterwards. So in 6th position, we have Mansfield Park, and I feel terrible about it. I feel terrible putting any of the novels in last, but Mansfield Park it was. In number 5, we have Northanger Abbey, because it was not very memorable. Then we have Emma in number 4. Then in number 3, we have Sense and Sensibility. In number 2, we have Persuasion. And in number 1, we have Pride and Prejudice, just because I could not do otherwise. So the caveat to this list is that I find it really hard to do numbers. And I think really they're just too sections. Top 3, they're just the books that I enjoyed the most, which are in Pride and Prejudice, Persuasion, and Sensibility. They're the 3 that when I finished, I was like, oh my gosh, loved it. And the other 3, I actually really enjoyed them, but they were just, I don't know, at the time that I read them, they just hit me less. And that's Emma, Northanger Abbey, and Mansfield Park. But that said, I also think that another caveat to this list is that I want to reread all of them again, and I'm sure that potentially the list would change. It's very much like at this moment, from the reading that I did in 2021, this is kind of the general feeling and list of the Jane Austen novels for me. And finally, we are now in section 4 of this video, which is just to actually recommend the order in which to read Jane Austen's novels. And I was like, I tend to just go by maybe publication order, because then you get a little bit of the arc and improvement and depth of a writer as they kind of get on with their career. However, I found an article by the female Scribbledrian. I'll put the link of the article in the description so you can go and see it. But she was talking about basically, yeah, which order to read them. One of them is publication, but the other one is written order. And I was quite surprised to find that the written order was different. So in publication order, if you want to read them in that order, is to start with Sense and Sensibility, which was published in 1811. Then go on to Pride and Prejudice, which was published in 1813. Then you go on to Mansfield Park, which was published in 1814. Then it's Emma in 1815. Then there was the 2 novels published after her death, Northanger Abbey and Persuasion. I think that that's quite a good order to go by, but I also quite like the order which she was written, in which you'll see the major difference is that Northanger Abbey was actually one of her first, I think it was her first completed novel, or the first one that she wrote anyway. So yeah, it's first it was Northanger Abbey, then you have Sense and Sensibility, then Pride and Prejudice, then Mansfield Park, then Emma, and then Persuasion. So the list changes slightly. I think either of these lists are great, and I think I would recommend either. I definitely think that reading Mansfield Park first was a mistake. So definitely don't start with that. But maybe you want to start with Pride and Prejudice, you know, it's the most famous one, and it will give you a great idea of what to expect. Maybe you'll be a little bit disappointed with the other ones. I'm not sure. I would definitely go with one of the 2 orders that I've said now. Please go in the link for the female Scribbledrian, anyway, and you can kind of see more of her explanation, and she has like, yeah, a great blog about it. But I'll definitely follow one of those 2 lists when I reread them next, because I think that that would make more sense to see. First is of the eras, I think her style changes because of the different styles that were like fashionable to write at that time. But also you just see her, I don't know, her improvement, her progress as a writer, and I love to see that in an author. And that's it for me with my Jane Austen video. Please let me know if you'd maybe like for me to do more in-depth reviews of the novels. There's actually so much to talk about for each novel, so could do a video for each one. I also would love to know what you think about Jane Austen's novel. Have you tried them? Do you like them? Which one's your favorite? Do you agree with my ranking? Probably not, because even I don't agree with it completely. Just let me know. I would love to chat about Jane Austen forever. And as always, thank you so much for coming along to this channel, for supporting me, and for watching. And I see you back. Bye!